Hey, mama, picture this. You're venting to your husband about a tough day, kids screaming, laundry piling up, and he's nodding, but you catch him scrolling on his phone. You feel ignored, and suddenly you're both frustrated. Ever been there? That's where active listening can save the day. As a married mom, you're juggling a million things, and feeling heard by your husband can recharge your connection and reduce conflict. I'm going to teach you what active listening is and why it's a game changer for your marriage. And I'm going to teach you practical ways to practice it, even with a packed schedule. By the end of this episode, you'll have 3 simple exercises you can try tonight to feel more connected to your husband. You can even practice these skills with your kids. Okay, let's dive in. So let's start by defining active listening. Active listening is fully focusing on your partner's words, emotions, and needs without interrupting, judging, and planning your response. It's about showing that you care and that you understand, even if you don't agree, right? So the goal is not to agree, it is to communicate understanding, non-judgment, and just really being engaged in what your partner or the other person you're talking to is saying. And this is important for every relationship, for everyone, but we're going to talk about why it's especially important for married moms. So let's kind of break it down. Married moms in general, feel invisible a lot of the time, right? Managing the mental load of parenting and household tasks. And there's a lot of unappreciated things, right? So being truly heard validates your efforts and your emotions and helps you feel seen and appreciated. It builds trust and reduces misunderstandings, which is really, really important when it's time to have deep conversations. It builds trust and reduces misunderstandings, which is really important when you don't have a lot of time for deep conversations. So being able to actively listen and be actively heard when you don't have a lot of time really, really makes a difference, since you can kind of have more quality since you don't have a lot of time. Active listening also models healthy communication for your kids, teaching them how to listen respectfully, how to pay attention, making eye contact, all of those things. So let's talk about signs of poor active listening. So these can be things like interrupting or giving unsolicited advice, like just hire a nanny or just let it go. It could be distracted responses, like saying like, okay, while checking an email or some reading, looking at your phone or something like that. A quick stat for you. There was a study in 2025, so pretty recent, that found that 83% of women feel that their partner doesn't validate their feelings, and that this is often due to poor listening, making active listening a top need in marriages. So there are people studying the specific impact of active listening on quality of a marriage, quality of satisfaction in a marriage. So this is really important stuff. It seems so basic, but it's something that most or many relationships that struggle don't do well in. As you're listening to this, I'm sure you can think of several examples from your own life about situations where you weren't heard, or you feel like maybe you didn't do a great job listening. So let's talk about why active listening feels hard for married moms. So why it's hard for us to actively listen to other people. Time constraints. So between kids, work, and chores, it's hard to stay focused. Sometimes it's hard to really stop and really listen and to plug in to whoever's talking to us. Emotional overload, stress from parenting can make it really hard to stay present instead of venting or problem solving. So if someone's talking to you and you're feeling overloaded or overwhelmed, then it's hard to want to just sit and absorb and really be plugged in the moment, because you may need to get stuff off your chest, or you may want to just solve it and move on. Habits are also sometimes difficult. So many couples fall into patterns of half listening, especially when they're distracted by things they're doing, kid interruptions, phones. So it can just be a habit to not stop and try to intentionally listen. But active listening doesn't require hours. It can happen in 1 minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes. It's just about being able to pause long enough to really click in, really focus on what the person in front of you is saying, and being able to be present. So, and I told you, you can apply this to both kids and your husband or anyone else. And the kind of thing that just popped in my mind is how often my kid wants to show me something. And especially for me, if I'm, in the middle of doing something, like I might have something in my hands that I'm doing and I can't look up. Maybe I'm cutting something, or I'm washing something, or I'm on the phone sending a text or working or whatever, and he wants to show me something, I have a choice. I can say, hang on a minute, let me just finish this. Or I can just stop what I'm doing for a sec and give him the attention. Or if he's trying to talk to me and I'm just kind of half plugged in, like that as a mom is something that I know I'm trying to work on. I'm not always great at it because I am very, very busy, but it is so important to me to plug in. And it's the same with my husband. Sometimes he wants to show me something or tell me something, and I may be really busy doing something else, or I'm focused on, maybe I'm reading something or I'm working on something, and having to stop and plug in fully can be hard, but it is a priority. I have to make it a priority. And then the value that comes from that, from really giving that person my full attention, is rewarded and it's reflected back to me, right? Because if I give that, they give it back to me, or they feel connected, or they feel happier. Like you can see immediately that they feel paid attention to, and that is super important. So please remember that. Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples of active listening that hopefully, I'm trying to think of general examples that would be kind of relatable for many of us. Not going to always be perfect, but let's go through a few. So example number one, let's talk about scenario. Well, imagine that you tell your husband, I am drowning with these kids' schedules and school stuff this week. We're super busy. We have all these events and activities and theater and all these things. And imagine if, in response to you telling him you were overwhelmed, he said something like, just make a list, it'll be fine. And while he says that, he's on his phone and he's just kind of not present. He's dismissive. So poor listening is, just make a list, it'll be fine. Active listening is, he puts his phone down, he looks at you, and he says, okay, that sounds like a lot. I am so sorry you have so much on your plate. What can I do to help? Okay. And even if he doesn't know what to help, if there's nothing he can do, it could just be, what do you need right now? Or do you need a hug? Like, that's a lot. What's the hardest part for you? Like, it's validating, right? That's an example of good active listening. And the reason that this works is that he's validating your stress, and he's kind of opening the door for you to share how you're feeling and to help you feel understood without him giving you a solution or kind of jumping to a solution for you. So example number two, let's say that you had planned, you put a grocery pickup in, and your husband was supposed to pick it up on the way home, and he forgot, autopilot, drove home, missed it completely. And by the time he gets home, it's too late. And let's say that you say something like, I'm just really frustrated. You were supposed to do this, and now I don't have stuff to make, we don't have stuff to make the kids' lunches for tomorrow. So poor listening in response to that would be, if he snaps and says something like, well, I was busy. It was a busy day at work today. Like, you could have done it. I don't know why you asked me to do it. You knew I was going to be busy. Okay. So defensive, escalates the tension. Active listening would be, taking a breath and just acknowledging, you're right, I'm sorry, I dropped the ball. I should have told you I was having a really busy day. I should have realized that I wasn't going to be able to do it, or I should have written it down. Like, let's see if we can figure something out for the kids' lunches tomorrow. Here, let me help you. So acknowledging your feelings, offering support, and it works because he's owning his mistake and focusing on your emotions that you're frustrated in the moment, but also focusing on de-escalating the conflict, right? So another example is, let's say if you said something like, I miss us having time together alone. It just seems like it's always been about the kids here lately. Poor listening would be if he said something like, yeah, that's just how it is with kids. We're busy. Like, it is what it is. And then changes the subject, right? So that would minimize your feelings. Active listening would be if he said something like, I hear you, it's been tough lately, like I miss you too. It's just, it seems like we've had a lot going on. Like, what kind of time together would feel good to you? Like, what would you like to do about that? Right. So validating and giving you a chance to explore solutions. And the reason that would work is that he would show that he values your need for connection and invites you to collaborate with ideas of what to do. And so in these examples I gave, it was about you getting validation or active listening back. But I want you to think about those same examples, even if you were to go back and listen to this, but think of the example of, the overwhelm with the day. Like, I have all these things going on with kids. So imagine if it was something flipped, if it was your husband saying that, like, well, I've got something every day with the kids this week. I'm just tired. I want to go home and relax, or having a really busy week with work. I just have so much going on. Like, imagine what would your poor response to that be, right? Would it be, what do you say sometimes that's not great? Do you say something like, well, I am busy too, and the kids are stressing me out, and I don't have any time to myself? Or are you saying something like, that sucks, I'm so sorry that you haven't had any downtime? Even if you haven't had any downtime. When we're talking about communication and we're talking about listening skills, it's not because this is all to serve us. This is to serve the relationship. If the relationship is served, if the relationship is nurtured, then you are nurtured, then your husband is nurtured. But I want you to think about what you might be saying and what you might be doing that could also be working against you or working against your husband. So going to that other example of the forgotten task, if your husband asked you to do something for him, or maybe you were supposed to, maybe you were running an errand and he had asked you to pick something up for him and you forgot. If he said, well, I really, really needed that. You said you were going to get it. I'm just a little frustrated. If your snap was, well, I had a million other things on my list to do. It's, I forgot, that's going to be, that's defensive, so if your response instead is something like, you're right, I am so sorry, it slipped, I had a lot on my plate today, but you're right, I should have grabbed that. Like, it diffuses, it doesn't make it go away. The goal is not to make the problem go away. The goal is to deal with problems differently. It diffuses the problem. Yes, that you or your spouse will still be frustrated that you don't have the thing you need, but at least there is ownership of the other person saying, you're right, I'm sorry. And then we move on and we just have to deal with it, because you know what? Crap happens. Things are forgotten. Things are missed. And that last one, that need for connection, if you find yourself in a position where you're asking your husband, like, hey, I miss, or if the opposite, if he was like, I wish we had more time together without the kids. And if you were dismissive of like, well, we're busy, like, what do you want me to do? That's not going to feel good. And being able to, and sometimes there isn't a great solution, and just being able to say, yeah, I know, you're right, I wish we had more help. That's it. You may not have a person or the resources to find a person to watch the kids so you can go out together alone. Or maybe you need to do better with carving out 5 minutes at night before you go to sleep to talk. But if you just can't, things are just crazy and you're go, go, go with sports and all the things, and you just don't have that, yes, it's always good to stop and say, yeah, you're right. Like, what do you think we should do? Or just validate, you're right, this lacks, I miss you, So I want you to work on how you do it so that you can teach, lead by example, and then lead to your husband kind of following your lead. So let's talk about some simple exercises to practice listening, active listening. And look, these are meant to fit in busy schedules, right? We're all busy. No one has time for a 45-minute exercise, like these are 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, whatever. Okay. So one thing that I encourage people to do, and I've had a lot of people find success with this, is setting time aside, 5 minutes, whether you have the time to do that daily or weekly, it doesn't matter, but just set a timer for 5 minutes where you tell the kids, or if it's after the kids go to sleep, but if the kids are awake, say, hey, mommy and daddy are going to talk about something. We're going to set a timer for 5 minutes. And then when 5 minutes are up, when you hear that timer, you can come and you can talk to us again. But for 5 minutes, you're going to play by yourself. And then in that time, you each take half of that, or maybe you do 2 10-minute timers, who knows, or 5-minute timers. You do a 10-minute block where you each get to talk about your day. Like, here's the crap that I went through today, or here are all the good things the kids did, or a little bit of both. And I just want to listen to what you did, what you went through, or I want to share what I did and what I went through. And then the other person is just listening. There's no phone. You're just sitting there across like you would at a restaurant, where you're just sitting there and you're watching and listening to each other. And you're using, active listening skills like, wow, that sounds fun, or that sounds tough. Huh, okay, then what happened? Just actively being involved. Like, it's called active listening because you are an active participant in this exercise. Okay. So for example, if you're talking about like, I felt so overwhelmed, like the kids were fighting, or I was late to my appointment, or I spilled something and had to clean it up, being able to have that person just hear you and not need to say, yeah, well, I had a crap day too, or you're not alone, like we're all tired, but it's just that person's turn to share. And again, it works because it creates a safe place where you have focused listening. Even if the kids are around, maybe, you give them that timer, they're doing something else. And you try to really make time for each other. So if, something to think about, if you're trying to do this and your husband seems a little distracted, being able to say like, hey, can we try to do this without the phone? Like, can you please put your phone down? We just need to do this for 5 minutes, like, or just give me 2 minutes of your attention, versus like, there you go again, you're on your phone, that is going to lead to more defensiveness than, hey, can we please do this for 2 minutes without connecting? Or, hey, if you don't have the time right now, if you seem busy or distracted, do you want to do this in a little, like, do you need to focus on that and then we can do this? But the goal is to have a conversation with your spouse where you say, we're going to do that. Like, this is important for both of us to connect. It's not like, well, I want to do this and you just have to go along with it. It's, hey, this is something that's important. And sometimes what you do is, if you're in a situation where you can't get your spouse to sign on to dedicated 5 minutes like that, then in your mind, do a mental timer for yourself where you try to do better without him even knowing that you're planning to do this, but just you do better with, I'm just going to listen. I have so much about my day that I want to say and vent about, but I'm just going to focus on him right now. I'm going to listen to what he's saying. He's venting about work or his friends or his family or whatever. I am just going to listen, and I'm going to lead by example. And then I'm going to do this a few times. And then maybe I'm going to say to him like, hey, I don't know if you noticed, but I've been trying really hard recently to work on listening more. I learned about this thing called active listening, and I'm trying really hard to practice listening to you talk about your day without me interrupting you, without me having to tell you about how tired I am. Like, if you're telling me you're tired, not trying to tell you I'm tired, even though I feel it, but like, have you noticed that I'm really trying to listen better? It's okay to point that out, but you have to do it in that calm tone, and you have to implement it and build it up to it where you're doing it and you're leading by example. Okay. So another exercise that you could do is really working on paraphrasing and validating. And I know this is going to sound so cheesy. You've heard people say these things before, but I'm telling you, when you are building a habit, any new kind of skill that you're trying to build, you have to start with the most basic, right? If your goal is to run 5 miles, you are going to start with running around the block, right? It may seem super small and it may seem like a drop in the bucket compared to the overall goal, but that's where we start, right? So when we're trying to learn how to communicate differently, we will start with the small things because that's just what we do, same that we teach children, okay? So if your husband is talking about something important, or something that matters to him, I want you to practice validating that and like pause and say like, it sounds like you're frustrated because work is really intense, or that sounds frustrating, or yeah, that makes sense, or man, that's a lot to handle. Like really try to reflect. If your husband, for example, says like, I'm really worried about our budget with the holidays coming up, your response could be something defensive, or it could be like, I hear you. It sounds like you're really stressed about money with all the extra expenses. I get why that's weighing on you. It's just validating. Like, I hear you. I get that. And that doesn't solve it, but our goal is not to provide solutions. We as women, I think more often than not, feel frustrated with men. I think there's a gender thing there. It's not always men and women in that dynamic, but I think commonly women feel like men don't listen as well because they're trying to solve our problems. So we have to also watch that we sometimes do that too, right? If he said to you, hey, we didn't budget this right, or, we didn't leave ourselves enough time, you can choose to get defensive because you're taking it personally, or you can just reflect on the frustration or the problem. And then, set aside time where you say, okay, it sounds like we need to sit down and talk about our budget. Or, hey, I don't like that when the topic of money comes up, you say it like I'm the only one spending money. Like, I'd like us to talk about this, right? So there are lots of ways to address the problem. We're not at that yet. We will talk about how word for word to address these problems. I'm going to teach you so many great scripts. But right now we're talking about being able to hear it and control yourself, shut your mouth and say, I hear you. I get that you're frustrated about that. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay. So practice this. This is your exercise number 2, is practice maybe like while you're listening to him talk about his day, or maybe you're doing a joint task together, maybe you're cooking together, or you're driving together, or something where you can hear him talk about something and you practice validating and paraphrasing, right? I hear you say that you're frustrated with this. And again, it sounds cheesy, but this is how we communicate. I hear you. I hear you. Okay. Exercise 3, the listening signal is what we're going to cause this. If you need to, and I do this a lot with clients that I work with, I do this a lot with kids too, is like kids and parents, is come up with a symbol, like a nonverbal or a word, something that says, hey, when I say this, that means you're not paying a ton of attention to what I'm saying right now, or I need you to focus. Like with kids, like little kids, sometimes will say something like, let me see your eyes, and that is implying I need eye contact. Okay. I need you to connect, or turn your body towards me, or can you face me, please? Right. So with adults, it's the same thing. You just have to have a more age appropriate symbol, right? It could be a completely unrelated word. Like if I say, potato, that's my sign. That's our funny sign that we're going to come up with, that whenever I say that, that's a funny way of me being like, pay attention to me. I need your attention. Put your phone down, whatever. Or it could be something like nonverbal, like, touch their arm and be like, so when they look up at you and be like, I'm talking to you, please listen. So, but I think whatever you can do to make it funny and playful, like if you come up with that together and say, okay, from now on, when I say Chihuahua, that's your sign that like you got sucked back into your phone again. And again, as the speaker, it's always good to, make sure your timing is good, right? If your significant other is walking in the door from a day that they've been exhausted by, and the kids are loud, or you're just like jumping in there and just start talking, like, is that a good time for your husband to pay attention to you, or does he need a minute? If you walk in the door and you're flustered from your day and he starts talking at you and starts telling you all the things that the kids did while you were gone, or why the dishwasher's not working or whatever, like, you might feel a little overwhelmed. Like you need a minute before you can really focus in on all the things he's saying. Like, let me get in the door, let me put my stuff down, let me go to the bathroom, and then I'm ready to listen to you. Or like, can we talk about this tonight after the kids go to bed? Like, and we're going to learn, again, I'm going to teach you how to pick and choose timing. But for now, come up with ways, I need you to hear me. Okay. So let's wrap it up. So I wanted you to get the point, and I think I made it a whole bunch, that this isn't about how to speak as much as it is about how to listen. Being a good communicator is highly, highly focused on how you listen. If you don't listen well, then you are not a good communicator. You might be great at what you say and how you say it and when you say it, but if you have a hard time listening to the person talking to you, then you are not a good communicator. And listening involves, again, active listening is not listening, it's being an involved listener, being someone who is paying attention, who is making eye contact, who is validating feelings, who is validating thoughts, who is not distracted, but someone who is interested and invested in what the other person is saying to them. And I want you to think as you go through your week, look at the people that you talk to, whether it's your coworkers, your friends, your kids, your husband, your mom, your whoever. Ask yourself, am I a good listener? Am I engaged? Am I paying attention? Because we know typically we can identify when we don't feel heard, but it's an extra step to identify if we're doing a good job hearing people. Good people to practice with are our children. You know, they are constantly demanding our attention. So you definitely are, there are times where you're going to be like, not now. But there's a difference between full attention, half attention. And I do want you to make sure you are working on having and as a busy mom, you're not going to be able to give your full attention all the time. It's just not possible. But make sure you are trying to give it some of the time and be intentional with when you're giving it and how you're giving it. And the same thing applies to your husband. How are you as a listener, as a receiver of information? Are you involved? Are you empathetic? Are you warm? Are you there because you care? Or does it seem like you're just waiting for him to stop talking so that you can talk or so that you can move on to the next thing? Okay. So I hope that was helpful to you. Practice being an active listener. And again, if you haven't, you should join my Facebook group. I just posted a video today about the chaos that I had in here, trying to record for you and kind of just stuff that happens in everyday life that leads, sometimes it feels very personal. I think the universe sometimes is trying to be mean on purpose, but just when things happen that take us away from what we're trying to do, and it's very frustrating. So those are the kinds of things where we support each other in this group. We try to be open about the real things that happen to us as moms, as we're trying to build busy lives. And it's been fun to see this group grow, not just in numbers, but more importantly in just activity and support for one another. So the group is called Married Moms Take Control on Facebook. And I will see you next week. All right. Take care. Bye.